Hello, welcome to the Augmentation of Man with Kent and Renee Miller, where we are bringing the future. And today we're going to be talking about
the coming new world, I guess.
yes. And before we get to the message for today from our spiritual guides, I would like to discuss a couple of messages. So you're probably wondering where we've been and if we've been okay. Yes, we've been fine.
We've been following the guidance of our mentors.
And so you want to tell them what's going on?
No, go ahead. We haven't put out any videos because our mentors told us it's not ready. We're not ready to put out these videos because we're going to get new information and a higher level of information, and which will begin. Well, the new cycle will begin when the interplanetary change
Poles reverse.
So we're not sure when exactly that's going to happen, but we're going to get new information, a higher level of information, which we will pass on to you.
And that's going to be starting pretty soon. But they told us that they don't want us to release this new information until we have a good understanding of what it is that they're going to teach us. And then we're going to pass this on to you.
And they asked if we're ready. Renee yelled, "Yes, we're ready."
Of course. I think most people would do the same thing, right? And so this is going to be very exciting. We're really happy about it. So if you are new to our channel, Kent, through going into meditation, into a deep trance, is able to hear spiritual communication and see visions.
Yeah, we've had a recent meditation the last few days, and you can tell by the vocabulary that this is going to be. We have to understand what they mean when they're telling these things. We have to decipher it. So you're going to understand the full meaning of what we're talking about when you hear the message we have for today. In the meantime, Renee is going to tell you something about her sister.
Yes. So in the past several weeks, my youngest sister was hospitalized, and she found out, and this was, it came as a huge shock because there was no leading up to it. It was, she was fine, and then she wasn't fine. And she went into the hospital and discovered that her heart she's in congestive heart failure, and she is not able to take the medications that they normally put people on who are in congestive heart failure. And so she is needing a heart transplant, and she cannot return to the job and the work she was doing because it's too physical. So at the present moment, she has filed for disability insurance. However, there's a lapse of time from the time that you apply until you actually start receiving checks. And she's got mounting hospital bills. She's at home with a continuous IV going and a medication to help her heart pump harder. But that is the one medication that she can take, and she can't stop that medication. She has to have it continuously until she receives a donor heart, which could be up to a year. So if you are so inclined and you're in a position, if you would like to donate to Judy and her cause, we have set up a GoFundMe account. Actually, my other younger sister set up a GoFundMe account, and I'm going to put the link below. And we'd like to thank you in advance. If you are able to do that, we are in deep gratitude to anyone who can help her out. We're helping, everybody's helping, but we're talking about, a lot of money here. So thank you very much. And with that, we'd like to go ahead and start with a PowerPoint. And so we're going to switch over to that and move to our lesson now. Thank you.
We're going to speak about today the coming of the new world and how we were told how it's going to be.
And this is just the beginnings of it. This message is addressing the very beginnings of this changing over to a new cycle.
So the reverent happenings, this is an aspiration event, a catacomb of the being. And we're going to try to decipher what we think all this means.
And so this is the actual verbatim language that's used by our spiritual guides. And so what we're going to do is present it in its original language, and then we're going to decipher it. And then at the end, we'll bring it all together and kind of do a synopsis and a recap on it so that it's more fluid at the end.
Okay, first thing we're going to do is find out what aspiracious event, what meaning is that? So aspire, the word aspire is to seek ambitiously, or long to rise up, to soar. And then a catacomb of the being is a catacomb, an underground cemetery or underground passage. And I think it's underground passage that has many twists and turns.
So is it like an analogy, you think,
I
or a
think
metaphor?
that's what it is. It's a metaphor.
Or it could be a metaphor of, to me, it brings to mind the ancient self that is hidden below, kind of below the surface, and that this is aspiracious event is that we're going to be right. This higher self is going to be rising up to a new level. So we're guessing, we're throwing both of those analogies out there, and that is up for you to decide which one resonates with you.
So back to the original language, be guided by the event, a coterious happening.
So cult is the root word of cultarius, and we think of like Jim Jones when it comes to cults,
That's not Jim Jones.
but it's not that definition. The definition is an instance of great veneration, reverence, and devotion. And this is tied to this aspiracious event. So it goes on, and we're talking, the message in white, the word is austriaceous. Now, it was difficult to find the root word to this. They gave us the definition, which means to give into. But when they use the word estuary, they always say ossuary. And so an estuary is a river flowing into the ocean where the two bodies of water are combining. And they use this a lot as a metaphor for energy flows, a smaller energy flow entering a larger body of energy, and the two mixing and combining.
Which is a cumulative effect. And they're talking about the cumulative effect of humanity.
And so is austriaceous the same as the root word estuary? And so that, and we're talking about energy flows. So kind of think of it in a visual of we're moving into a larger body of water, and we're moving with this energy flow.
Larger body of energy.
Yes. And so we're to give into this. So this estuary is happening, this event happening, we're to go with it, like acquiesce to it. And and it has a cumulative effect on humanity.
Right. And we're talking causation is apprehensible, irrefutable evidence of the movement. And go ahead. We were talking about, we're having difficulty deciphering this particular meditation, but go ahead.
So when we talk about apprehensible, we're talking about something that's is capable of being understood. So this event has a cause of us coming to a greater understanding. And they're saying that the evidence before us is going to be irrefutable.
Yeah, so and we're talking about a comprehensive atmosphere. The comprehensive means a large scope of something, hovering extensive mental range or group, having a extensive mental range or group. So comprehensive of a large scale. This is going to be, this energy and this movement is going to be extremely large.
And I think that this is all having to do with this higher self rising up out of the shadows. We have for many centuries shoved the higher self into the shadows. And we're going to get into this a little bit further, but I think we're going to be called out on this in the near future. And it's a lesson. So we're going to have to come to a new understanding.
A new orientation.
Mm-hmm.
So humanity, mankind, they're arising out of the past several hundred years and a new chaotic orientation. So what does that exactly mean?
So if we're looking at the definition of orientation, it is a state of being oriented, meaning having a clear understanding of where you're at, to adjust with relation to your new surroundings, new facts, circumstances. And so
that's part of the coming of the new world, to orient yourself to the new understanding. When you look around and you see the new world.
And are coming to really understand the ancient self, the higher self, and why we're here. What is the purpose of life? And how we've been so distracted over hundreds of years where we've lost our way.
When we orient ourselves to the past, we look at history and we see our chaotic past. And when we understand that, then we will immediately see our future and the changes that will come from the future. But we have to understand our past as a humankind. We can't just look at a week or a month or 20 years or 30 years. We have to understand
a longer period of time,
way back, generations of past,
and how we got to this point,
how mankind got to this point,
and neglecting the true path and why we're here, which is to learn and to grow in our own consciousness and our own spiritual self, to add to that body of knowledge that the soul holds, and to come to a higher vibrational state as a result of it. And so this is where we're going in the next cycle, which is going to be starting really soon. The coming of the new world, and our orientation of the past and immediate future will change. So how we're seeing things, how we view things that have happened over the past, and our immediate future is going to be a whole new way.
It's all about the importance of life. So we will realize the importance of life. There's circumference of the being, the whole of the being.
Mhm. Everything that
We have to
surrounds
realize
us in
that.
this field,
Right. So
why we're here
is the cumulative effect on humanity being all events occurring at the same time?
at this time. So this was a question that I had asked that about, I was trying to get them to clarify what this cumulative effect on humanity was. And I thought, it's just all these events that are happening right now. And there's just such a quickening of time. But the answer was, and the past. So it's not just now, but we're going back through the past. We're going to have to reevaluate everything that's happened over the last few hundred years because
Or 5,000 years.
possibly our understanding is off. And they're telling us that with this new cycle, we're going to be spending several years going back through all this, the facts of what has happened over all this time and how we were misled and how our consciousness was controlled to bring us to an entirely new understanding of what has been happening.
You know, this is not just for those that live in North America. This is the world. This is a formative impeachment of humanity. The whole world is coming.
Mhm. And so what is the definition of impeachment? The presentation of formal charges against humanity. So we're going to be judged, and we will have to come to a new understanding with this judgment of where we went wrong with our understanding and how we're so off as far as truth.
You know, when this judgment comes, humanity out of this judgment will have a higher will to understand
Mhm.
this thing and have a greater value, develop a greater value for life.
And why we're here. So we're going to recap this, and this is our synopsis. So there's an aspirational event arising out of the past several hundred years, and I imagine this is a collective, something collective that's being driven from within of all humanity, and a new chaotic orientation that's going to evolve. The way that we see our world is going to change, and there's going to be a chaos associated with this change at first until
Because
we sift through all the facts and come to a new understanding.
humankind is going to see this as chaos.
It will be kind of chaotic
Well,
because you have a
to the
shift of,
definition of the human being,
Mhm.
this will be considered chaos. To understand, if we understand, or I understand, maybe you understand, this is not chaos to you and I.
it's kind of like entropy, okay? So this is one of my favorite words. Entropy is a state of organization. It can be related to, I believe it's temperature, but a chemistry teacher had given us, the class, an analogy of entropy, which I found very interesting. So if you take a teaspoon of salt and you pour it into a glass of water and you stir it up, as that salt is dissolving, you have sodium and chloride ions that start separating, and they start bouncing around, and they're bouncing off of each other, and they're bouncing off the surface of the water. They're bouncing off the wall of the glass. And it's very chaotic. But then as time goes on and all this separation of the ions happens so that it dissolves into the water evenly, what happens is that all those ions eventually become spaced evenly out amongst each other, and they slow down in their movement and start to settle down, and they're all spaced relatively same spacing between molecules. And so it goes from a state of total chaos to a state of organization. And I think this is how I look at it, is that this new orientation for humanity, we're going to have all these thoughts bouncing around. Well, what is the truth? This is where we're at now too, right? But as the facts are being introduced and this shocking information comes forward, we're going to, our belief systems are going to be really challenged, and it's going to be very disorganized and chaotic. But then as the facts are introduced and we start to connect the dots and it forms the bigger picture, it starts to become more organized.
Now we're speaking about energy events.
I'm talking about as the facts come out.
Right. And we're not talking about humanity treating humanity like that right now. That's chaos. And humanity will be judged the way they're treating humanity right now. You think Russia and
The wars.
Ukraine are going, Russia will be judged on the value of life in this war. So you have to not go along with Russia or whatever that's creating all this. Think about the energies that will come.
So a big part of the learning that we will be going through is the understanding of war. And we have to come to understand all vibration, including the vibration of war. But we're going to be sifting back through all these past events that have happened in human history that will include all the wars of the past.
And we'll go back hundreds and hundreds, several hundreds, or a couple thousands of years to how mankind treated mankind.
And so the crux of this lesson is that humanity will come to understand the value of life itself, rising up from the dead, and meaning that because the higher self has been pushed into the shadows and we've neglected the higher self and the learning, the true learning path, now we're being brought to a new understanding of life and why we're here and what the purpose of life is. So we are rising up out of our own deadness and moving into the whole being of life.
Yeah, understand, contemplate what the meaning of life is. Contemplate and think about it, give it some time. And then pass it on to those that you know, the meaning of life, what you feel the meaning of life. Communicate with others what their meaning of life will be, and you will come to a conclusion that probably is a lot closer to each other's definition of the value of life than you really thought. You've got to give it some value of thought here, because mankind is at the edge of the cliff, wanting to push each other over the cliff. We have to stand strong and not let it happen. So we have to communicate with each other the value of why we're here and of life itself, what it means in this context.
So we hope that you have gotten something out of this lesson today. Again, I want to just remind you to visit my sister's GoFundMe account, which is going to be linked below if you are so inclined. And thank you again for anyone who wishes to donate. And as always, peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment.
Yeah, study what we just gave you and come to a conclusion for humanity.
Have a good day. I'm glad to be back. We'll be bringing you new information in the near future. Okay, it'll be exciting.
Take care.